welcome back from that break. I've acquired a little helper in the break time, who's going to be my assistant here doing the very brief intros for this next panel session. So as I said before the break, this is probably this topic, how do we maintain HR strategies to give us flexibility, adaptability, and agility? Probably the most important thing we're going to talk about, because those three things are actually the secret to the future, not any fixed idea of exactly what the future is going to look like. So to lead us through this panel, we have the excellent Colin Murphy from Sirva, who is going to take over and introduce the panelists and guide us through this conversation. So Colin, from us, over to you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Luca. Thank you very much. Glad to be a sponsor of this event. For those of you who may not be aware of who Sirva is a global relocation and moving service company. We are in 177 countries across the US, Europe, and Asia, and we work with organizations of all sizes, helping them with visa and immigration services, household goods shipments, and destination services, and our offering is underpinned by some very good technology. I am pleased to be joined today by a panel, and let me introduce our panel. Our first person, I'll start with Natalie. Natalie Britt is Director of HR at the International Convention in Sydney. Hi, Natalie.
Hi.
And Keryn Mendes. Keryn is the Global HR Mobility Lead and Switch Program Manager at CSIRO. Hi, Keryn.
Hey. Hi, Colin. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And Lincoln Turvey, who is General Manager of Transformation at Virgin Australia. Hi, Lincoln.
Hi, Colin. Hi, Colin.
Very well, thank you. And now also we're joined by Zamil Seba. Now I know Zamil was having some tech issues. Don't know if she's going to be able to join us or not. Are you there, Zamil?
I believe she's joining us soon, Colin.
Okay, so she'll be joining us in a minute. So we'll crack on, and hopefully Zamil will be able to join us. So what an interesting year it's been. But before we get into this session, oh, Zamil, you're here.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Glad you were able to make it. Thank you. Thank you very much. So what I'll do is I'll just maybe go around and have each of you just introduce yourselves briefly. So maybe I'll start with you, Natalie, please.
Sure. So my name is Natalie Britt. I am the HR Director for ICC Sydney. I joined the week that COVID-19 hit last year in March, and just completed my anniversary last week to the day. So very happy to be here today to talk about my experiences.
Thanks, Natalie. Keryn?
Thanks, Colin. Keryn Mendes, I'm Global HR Specialist in Mobility, and I'm also the Program Manager for Switch, which is an externally facing collaboration program.
Thanks, Keryn. And Lincoln, please.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Lincoln Turvey is my name. I'm currently with Virgin Australia. I joined Virgin in September last year, which was I think just short of 2 months before we exited administration. So I joined in the role on an interim capacity as the Chief People and Communications Officer. I've now moved into a business transformation role.
Thanks, Lincoln. And Zamil.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zamil Sarva, Executive General Manager of People and Culture at Genu. I joined Genu in December of last year, and previous to that was the Director of Culture, Leadership and Capability at La Trobe University for a 3-year period.
Thanks, Zamil, and glad that you're able to join us. So this session, we're looking at HR strategies to build flexibility, adaptability, and agility. And we've had a very interesting last 12 months. Obviously, with COVID, we've had bushfires, floods, lots and lots of change, geopolitics. More recently, we're being challenged with, I think I recently read that, vaccine nationalism is the new thing that's floating around. Borders opening and borders closing. Obviously, Brisbane in a snap lockdown. And in this environment, trying to manage a workforce is interesting to say the least. No sector, every sector has been impacted. No sector has been impacted as much as the aviation sector. So, Lincoln, your recent role change to GM of transformation business transformation, it's probably a good place to start the conversation. So maybe if you could share how it came about and what your key priorities are.
Sure, thanks, Colin. Look, and you're spot on. Very difficult managing a workforce when we're standing people up, standing people down, and we've got crew who have to get their head around what's required of them as they fly into different destinations. As you know, governments are literally trying to work out how to manage each event on a case-by-case basis. So I think that's a great comment. So the role, I guess the role that I'm in essentially is a continuation of what started when Virgin Australia entered administration during 2020. Clearly heading into administration, you know, it was a fairly brutal experience for all of the people that were there. And out of necessity, significant transformation in the form of restructuring had to occur, and had to occur really quickly across fundamentally three elements. So significant simplification of the business, cost out, obviously, but then also optimising a lot of the commercial arrangements that had been put in place earlier and were proving problematic. And that, you know, that have been sort of well publicised in the lead up into COVID itself, with COVID being the straw that broke the camel's back. That was an enormous amount of heavy lifting for the people in the business. Fair to say they were very exhausted by the end of last year, and effectively actually got us to the starting line for restarting the business. So Bain Capital, the new owners of the business, you know, obviously what we started needs to continue when we're in a market that remains incredibly competitive and incredibly unpredictable with the COVID-19 imposing a lot of variability on us. Not to mention the fact that the whole industry is trying to rebuild the market. A lot of people are still very wary of travelling, and we've got to make sure that all of our safety controls, etc., are spot on to really help rebuild that confidence. And we've got a new player in the market as well, so no shortage of challenges. So my role was put into place essentially to continue that journey, I guess, and transition from, you know, quite a brutal transformation period into integrating the transformation imperatives with the BAU. We've been really conscious and deliberate about the way that we're doing that, and we've actually engaged Bain & Company. And Bain & Company are working with us using their results delivery office methodology, so it's quite a prescriptive methodology. And whilst we're obviously still intensely focused on cost of commercials, revenue, profitability, and we've still got a lot of work to do in those spaces, I guess the difference now as we move into more of a BAU transformation program is that we're also focusing really heavily on our ways of working. And that's where the Bain & Co methodology is really powerful for us. So we've got to be able to move quickly. We've got to get decisions quickly. We've got to be okay with some failures, and we've got to be okay with an 80-20 way of operating. And that's not always the way that we had worked historically. So that's really a key enabler for the transformation program, and the leadership focus on those ways of working is an absolute priority at the moment, Colin.
Thanks, Lincoln. Thanks for sharing that. It's definitely an interesting role. So moving things along, Natalie, just to bring you into the conversation, Lincoln talked about the changes and the challenges in his industry. You've had your challenges. You know, one of the unfortunate downsides of COVID has been reduction of headcount. And as you know, many organizations have been forced to, reduce headcount. So in these circumstances, how have you helped your workforce to do more without burning out?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, and I appreciate Lincoln's predicament for the last 12 months. It's been exactly where ICC Sydney has been. Hospitality's events industry has been hit just as hard. And when it hit us in March of last year, we stood down 2/3 of our workforce. We never actually shut, so we never closed down the convention centre. So we still had a pool of full-time team members are operating in our venue. So in terms of your question around, doing more with less, that's exactly what we had to do from day one. So there are a couple of strategies we put in place. Obviously, the first one was going through a transformation of our own and looking at how we flatten our structures, how we become more agile and more flexible in the way in which we work. We did restructures across all departments, and to do that, we had to obviously cross-skill our current team members that we didn't stand down. So how did we do that? We developed mobilization projects. So what we did was we knew that our critical skills in the business needed to be retained. So out of that, 100 odd people that we kept in the business, we had to make sure that we utilised their skills most effectively. So to do that, we sent out a survey and we identified what skills and capabilities that the current team members had, so that we could potentially cross-skill in other areas that were critical to our business to keep operating. So, for example, we had our chefs and our culinary F&B, food and beverage department have to cross-skill into our asset and trades environment. So we had to develop those skills on the job. We had to provide them with short and long-term courses from TAFE New South Wales to make sure that they were trained and equipped to do that piece of work. But the benefit of that was that we retained the skill set. Yes, they're chefs and they weren't cooking, but they were providing valuable contribution in the asset and trades environment. So quite unique. In terms of, I guess, reviewing our processes. So one of the things that we did was provide simplicity. So obviously we wanted to create efficiency with only 100 staff. We wanted to make sure that they were being utilised in the most effective way. So it was about reviewing our policies. It was about simplification of processes and procedures. And I'll take the example of recruitment. We have a vision for our recruitment strategy, and our vision is your CV gets you in the door, chemistry gets you the job. So instead of the 10 odd steps in a recruitment process that weighs up the time that it takes to recruit people, you're only doing a very simple check. You're looking at their CV and their skills and experience, you're getting them in the door, you're training them, and you're building that connection and that behavioural skill set that you need in a job. So it was about reviewing policies, it was around reviewing procedures and practices that we had in place, but it was also going through a very large scale transformation that hit every one of our departments.
Very good. So so you've had chefs who are now putting on the tool belt and going around fixing up the building.
They are conducting audits, they are tagging and testing, they are helping out in our audio-visual department. They're in terms of modification of the work that we've had to do in this period to remain open and to move into that virtual space has been such a success of us. You look at the background of what I'm doing right now, we have a green room, so we've set up a studio for all virtual live events that we host here today. So that's been a huge revenue stream for our business throughout this 12 months. And it's about that agility and that flexibility and adaptability to new markets that will continue to be with us for the next 12 to 18 months at least.
Right. And were your staff very open to, changing up their roles?
Yeah, look, it comes down to consultation, and it comes down to being completely transparent and, getting them to be part of the process rather than do it in isolation. So when we did the consultation around our transformation, it did take time. It wasn't a very reactive approach to how you run a transformation process. We had a number of steps, and the first step was actually sitting down and consulting with the change in the job. So looking at the duties and the position descriptions and understanding what level of skill set was changed, or what needed to be additional duties added to that position description, and then going through with the team member what that meant for them. Did it mean that they need to be retrained? Did it mean that they need to go through a contestable process to apply for that position because it had significantly changed? So going through those steps and making sure that the team member had the opportunity to be consulted with, to sit down and give us feedback on what potentially we had missed throughout that restructuring experience was crucial. I guess in terms of our measurement of success, we had a number of people that moved into new roles and accepted those new positions and are now in new departments thriving. And we also had 0 fair work cases through our transformation. We did large scale transformation. We didn't have one case moving into fair work. So huge success around our consultation processes.
Well done. Well done. Zamil, great that you were able to sort out the tech issues and you're able to join us. What about you in terms of linking employee goals to business priorities while maintaining a strong element of flexibility. How are you going about that right now?
Yeah, thank you very much, Colin. We're actually going about this in a crystal clear way through really impactful communication. So we're being really clear about what our business priorities are and why, and the way in which they need to be designed and also delivered differently now in a, I guess, a blended and virtual world. So the big C is clarity. That actually helps when we say we still have these business priorities to achieve, and then how we're going to do that, and then what is your role in delivering that. So we're not only doing it in a clear way, we're actually making sure it's part of regular conversations every month. So instead of actually taking a longer term view to it, we're using lots of pulse points about short-term refresh and reconnecting with business priority. Your goal needs to be this. Let's enhance the innovative way in which how you're going to achieve this in a changed environment. But then with the client experience being at the heart, how can we actually enhance workplace flexibility to actually support those who use Genu's services? So this is where it's not just about what needs to be achieved and how, but how can we enhance the client experience using flexibility for their benefit as well as for the individual's benefit. One of the other things that's also been really important is in maintaining and enhancing flexibility is focusing on the outcome, not just focusing on the flexible nature of work. So really clear, regular check-ins, regular communication, and also thinking about this through the client experience eyes. So we've had some magnificent ways in which we've been able to continue on through COVID, looking at business priorities and employee goals. And probably a lovely story I'd like to share with you is we have a workforce of 3,000 paid employees and 600 volunteers. So our volunteers still looked at the business priorities of being able to provide services to some of our clients, and not being able to do that in a practical way, which is calling on their homes, etc. They designed what's called the Letter Project. So thinking about this from a flexibility perspective, our volunteers wrote letters to our clients to enhance their experience, to help them feel connected. And the Letter Project now is going to be relaunched because we realised this was a much more flexible, personable way in which we can enhance the client experience and we achieve the business priority.
Very good, very good. So I should point out that Genu delivers disability services for those listeners who aren't aware of the services that you provide. And to your point, Zamil, you have a volunteer workforce, which I think you actually mentioned earlier on that you've seen double in size.
We have. The Letter Project really was, I guess, a flagship project that was born out of challenging times. Things are unclear. How can we keep our volunteers engaged? And they sat down and said, what's a really important thing for somebody to receive when they're isolated and lonely? And that was a letter. And we had children of childhood age writing letters to some of our senior community members, and it's actually had a profound impact, not only on our senior citizens within the organisation, but also the joy of a child sharing more about their life in a really traditional way.
Right. So you would have the challenge, because in your services, I'm assuming it's visitations and the like. So you have care of duty for your staff member, volunteers, plus the individual. Yes. So how do you manage that balance?
What we do is first of all, we look at what is the client's needs. And then how can we actually balance the client's needs in a different environment where it was always 100% client delivery to the doorstep.
Right.
So with that, we've introduced, I guess, like in many aspects, telephone ways of connecting with clients and supporting clients, Zoom calls.
Right.
We've given a lot of our clients a mentor and somebody new. We've connected clients with neighbours. So we actually broaden the community check-in. And then we've had the additional support of our volunteers, thinking about a new and better way to actually support clients through challenging times.
Yeah. So thinking outside the square.
Absolutely.
Very good. Keryn, great to have you on board this afternoon, especially being one of Sirva's valued clients, and really appreciate our partnership with CSIRO. So I know that your role is very much centered around overseas cross-border movement of staff, and I know this has been a very relaxed, easy year for you with not too many complications or challenges. Is that the case?
Oh, that's a perfect description of it, Colin. You know, I've been at the gym and
just relaxing, living the life of Riley.
And apologies for that feedback I had earlier. Zamil wasn't the only one with tech issues. Yeah, look, Colin, I think, you know, those words adaptability and flexibility have been sorely underestimated for us all over the last 12 months. It's certainly not exclusive to me or to mobility. But I have seen over the last 12 months some pretty impressive acts around some very strategic and senior HR and mobility people literally kind of rolling up their sleeves, picking up the phone, finding people around the globe, and just really helping employees basically navigate a landscape that was changing hour by hour. I mean, if you think about this time last year, Colin, I can think about unfortunately getting stuck in my pajamas from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. because I was trying to bring someone back from overseas and there were border implications going on. And, you know, it was just a complete moving feast, I think, for the use of a better word. And then, you know, looking at, you know, mobility practitioners being kind of at that operational forefront of trying to stay one step ahead of the pandemic, it really was a challenging past 12 months. And it doesn't stop now. It's still a challenging beast moving forward. But, you know, I think as a collective community, we've done some really amazing things over the last 12 months. You know, we've developed policies at lightning speed, far faster than we ever would have anticipated, just to keep up with the demands of the pandemic. And, you know, that started with, you know, policy reforms around temporary extractions, around pulling people out of countries from foreign locations. And then we moved on to the next evolution, which was around supporting the individuals that had longer term displacement issues and still have long-term displacement issues. I think about people that are out there now trying to get home. And now we're also, while still managing those live cases, trying to look forward around developing, you know, work from anywhere or remote working frameworks and policies, and really listening to our employees. I was at an industry function not long ago where a mobility practitioner said to me, I feel more like a counsellor on a day-to-day basis than I do a HR practitioner. So, you know, that's sort of some of the things that we're getting involved in on a day-to-day basis. But, you know, it's not just about, you know, making sure that our organisations remain compliant in an offshore sense, but also that we're working towards keeping our employees safe and their health and well-being front of mind first and foremost.
So there's a lot more due diligence and focus on compliance, tax implications, visa, etc., going into every decision.
Yeah, look, it is. And look, just like the rest of us, the tax authorities in countries were chasing their tail just as much as public or private sector or corporations were. Yep. And so we're trying to make sure that we're keeping abreast of what those changes look like. There were short-term concessions afforded from some tax authorities, which have now been not revoked, but removed or updated. And so that has, you know, future implications, but also it has implications for reaching backwards into people's tax histories, depending on where they were extracted from or where they've been redeployed to. So it's really around trying to stay abreast with the sheer amount of volume and almost volume of communication saturation to stay on top of all of this, to make sure then you keep your organisation abreast of all those changes.
Yeah, never a dull moment.
Never.
Moving forward, none of us has a crystal ball. We don't know what the future will bring. So question to the panel, how do you manage your workforce when the future is so unclear?
attended an event yesterday where Minister Stuart Ayres, he's the Minister for Employment out in Western Sydney, is based in Penrith, and I'm going to steal his quote. I think it resonated with me and what we've done at ICC Sydney, and that is listen as hard as you can talk. So we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and it's about that ongoing feedback and consultation with your team members. It's certainly been critical in our transformation and particularly looking at the future. I think the other point is that the executive team here in ICC Sydney have a strategy, and that is one foot in the present and 1 foot in the future. So looking ahead, not looking back, and being able to assess the constant evolution of structures to become more agile and lean. And I would also say having generalist skills as opposed to having specialist skills is very much the norm now. Being able to adapt and have a multitude of skill set that you can draw on in a period where you have to, like you said, Keryn, roll your sleeves up and do whatever you can to support is critical. And I would say that, keep your engagement pulse check strategies ongoing. We kept monthly pulse checks and engagement surveys out since March, and we had a 75% engagement rate through the transformation. So that's unheard of. And the reason and the feedback we were getting as part of those surveys was that we were openly transparent throughout the process. There was no hidden agenda. There was no, they walked through every step of the process and they understood the changes that needed to occur. And so I think, having that consultation, being transparent and looking to the future rather than looking behind us, because we all know what has happened over the last 12 months. It's now time to look at the opportunities and the growth that will come back. There is a contest out there for talent, and I think that it's about harnessing that talent. There's a lot of displaced people, particularly in the airline industry. We've been able to, secure great candidates from the airline industry that, have come from customer service, great backgrounds, and are now applying for security officer positions. Unheard of, right? But it's about flexing your suitability to those roles moving forward and being able to train them appropriately.
And I know that you mentioned that when we were having a chat leading up to this, your CEO had weekly update meetings with staff, keeping them informed, and would stay there until every question was answered.
Yeah, so I remember, and I remember this because it was probably my second week on the job. Jeff Donoghue, our CEO that's been out in the media pretty much from the beginning, is an advocate for our industry. He said, one of the things he prides himself on is you never have a team member go home wondering. And so we had fortnightly fortnightly executive briefings, and they were virtual and also on site. And I remember we held one second week on the job, and we sat on the stage in one of our theatres, and the first time we opened up all the questions via a Menti app where anyone could ask anything, and we had 152 questions, and I kid you not, we sat there and we answered every single one of those questions. We had a sore throat towards the end of it, but it was the commitment that the executive team wanted to maintain, that we were going to answer every single question no matter how long it took.
That's hard listening.
Yes.
Well, I think, I guess from my perspective, I was listening to, Natalie, Zamil and Keryn, and the key theme that came through listening to all three of you was exactly to your point, Natalie, around actually genuinely engaging with people, not just telling them things and talking at them. And I think, to your question, Colin, we all get busy, and particularly when the business is under stress as leaders. So the default is almost not to talk or to send emails or to just tell. We've got to find that time to make the authentic, genuine connections. And that example with 152 questions for me, Natalie, is exactly the way that we need to operate, because to your point, Colin, it is uncertain. We don't know what it's going to be like. And if we don't take the time to allow people to ask the questions and then take the time to answer them, then that uncertainty is just going to escalate for people. And I think too, be very deliberate about the mechanisms. Some of the technology, you referred to Menti, Natalie. Another thing that we did in Virgin was we launched the workplace platform early on in administration. And we'd never had a tool like that in the business before, but it was incredibly powerful and has almost become the default now. It's very easy to strike up a dialogue through that platform. It's really powerful. We're committed to continuing to engage with our people in that way. And certainly our communications team have also, they've always been very effective, but absolutely come into the fore and be key. So for me, it's really about engagement, and being genuine about that.
Lincoln, further to your point, one of our key learnings about managing a workforce when the future is unclear is, first of all, there are a lot of things that are clear. So say, share and tell those things honestly and also over and over again, because there are often some key things that we do know that will really be important for that our workforce to hear and understand, so that they've got, I guess, some baseline clarity about what is clear in the near future, but also the honesty, as you both talked about, Lincoln and Natalie, about what's unclear and unknown and who and how that's going to be worked through. And when people feel as if they've been heard and that there is the genuine response that we don't know about A or B or C that's in the business, that's a much more authentic answer versus trying to construct anything. And we found that far more engaging, like you all have on the panel here today, to actually always be truthful.
And it's really important around that consultation, Lincoln, to your point, when we did the transformation, yes, there's the consultation clauses in Fair Work where it says you must consult, right? But being genuine about that, and we as HR practitioners have that responsibility to anyone that's leading that process, that it's not just putting that message out there and not doing anything about it. So, one of my key objectives for my HR team, who were a team of 21 down to 6 at one stage, I had said to them, everyone must respond to any feedback we get, whether it's via email, verbal, text messages. We need to show that we are actively responding and we're providing that clarity when people are asking questions. So it's been authentic, it's been genuine, but it's also having empathy towards, when you send a message out there, you say what you do. You don't just put it out there and then set and forget. So I think that's really important.
I think there's also genuine business value in that, Natalie, right? I mean, I know we've sort of been doing waves of restructure, unfortunately, which, fingers crossed, we're at the tail end of now. But even in the restructure of my own team, through the consultation, quite frankly, we had some huge blind spots that we'd missed. There were a couple in particular, and the team did speak up, and we did pause to listen to them, and so we reversed some of those decisions that, in principle, we were committed to. And the easy thing to do is charge ahead to get to the end point quickly and move on to the next thing. But I totally agree with you. I mean, you people that are doing the work know much better than you are typically what the right way to be organised and for the roles to be defined is.
Is one of the upsides of what we've been through in the last year more of a holistic approach to HR, that we are now listening, considering? I'm hearing the word empathy mentioned a few times in the conversation. Do you think we are leaning more towards considering the whole person?
I think, colleagues, without a doubt, because the whole person now incorporates their physical well-being, their mental health and well-being, their engagement with work and about work, and also the impact of work in life. So I think as HR leaders and practitioners, we have no choice but to embrace the whole person in all aspects of work now.
Just checking here to see if there's any questions. We haven't had any questions come in, so we've got another few minutes. So let me ask you another open question to the panel. In terms of HR's key role in reshaping the employee experience in light of new norms, what do you see?
I think for ICC, but also as a HR team moving forward, our number one priority is to lower risk. Lower risk from a team member perspective, and making sure that, to your point, it's around their health and safety and their mental state throughout the process, and making sure that we have support programs in place. Our EAP went up 30%, and there was more utilisation. So proactively, talking about the services that are on offer out there, because there are heaps. In terms of, communication, engagement, that's a priority. I think, looking at the landscape around our IR changes that are going to come into effect, particularly around our contingent labour, around casual, we need to be mindful that we're educating the business that, gone are the days where you can use casuals as full-time employees. It's about making sure that measures are in place, policies are reviewed, and processes are put in place to support contingent labour moving forward, so they don't get stuck like they were in JobKeeper, knowing who was a long-term casual versus who wasn't. And I think, being able to continue to train and develop and cross-skill. We need to set our people up for success, that they have succession plans in place, that they have ongoing training and development, so that when we are in positions where we have to structurally change or reshape, that there's more opportunities for them to move into different areas that they wouldn't have thought of prior to COVID. So it's that agility piece and that flexibility to support that program.
Yeah, and I'd say probably leveraging off that a bit, Natalie, in our business, we're in a very deflationary period at the moment, and hopefully that doesn't last long, Colin, but increased engagement is unlikely to come from quickly successive promotions and pay rises in the next few years for people. So I guess what we're looking at in a much smaller, much flatter structure is, and we're going to be very deliberate about, is how we can maintain and continue to improve engagement in the absence of those things. So from an L&D perspective, it's about how do we do that in a lateral way that's more enriching for people. And obviously, again, engagement, as in leader engagement. And the softer side, to coming back to the point of the whole person, is going to be absolutely critical in that. We've got a great reputation culturally in that regard. We refer to our Virgin Flair, and in our new strategy document, that's literally, graphically, but literally at the heart and at the core of what the future looks like for us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lincoln.
Yeah, Colin, from an international perspective, maintaining engagement in remote working situations is probably one of the more challenging scenarios. And so we're seeing lots of organisations kind of look at reimagining their global workforce strategies. So where they perhaps can't bring people in anymore because due to border restrictions, we're looking at organisations turning to things like GEC, so global economic employers, also looking at different modes of engaging staff, and to Natalie's point earlier around looking internally to reskill as well, and looking to see if there's an appetite to fill some of those skill gaps internally.
Just to add to your point, Keryn, I know certainly from a workforce planning perspective, we're really turning it on its head and redesigning, well, what is a core workforce, for what purposes and reasons, and what needs to be our surge workforce, for what purposes and regions, and then what skills do they need to have? And then what are the different ways to keep our core workforce and our surge workforce actually engaged with Genu? And we're trying to actually centralise it back to values. Our values have never been more important in times where futures are unclear. And importantly, even our volunteer workforce has doubled over the last 12-month period, because we've really talked about the importance of values and the capability of a surge workforce that's completely unpaid, doing some really imaginative work. So we've really looked at also storytelling to enhance the values in challenging times, and why you as a core or surge workforce member are really valuable to us.
Thank you very much. That's been really good. I think we've hit the time, so want to say thank you very much, each and every one of you, for playing a part today, for your contribution. If anyone has any questions, I'm sure they can send them through and we'll get them to you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Colin.
Okay, bye now.
Thanks, Colin. Great, great job. Great conversation. You lucked out with a panel of really good panelists.
Thank you.
Who all knew their stuff. So what I got was the importance of listening, the importance of thinking about the whole person, the importance of skills and reskilling, thinking about employment models differently. I think it's really important, thinking about what it means to be employed by an organisation, and then finally the importance of values in everything that you do. I think that came from a number of people.
Yes.
You need to be true to who you are, and then whatever you do, as long as it's true to your values or to your essence as an organisation,
absolutely,
it's going to kind of work out. So I thought they were great takeaways.
Yeah, the one line that stood out for me was having one foot in the present and one foot in the future.
Yeah.
I think that's where so many people are. It's like one foot right now and managing the challenge of today, but also with an eye on, we got to plan for the future and moving forward.
Yeah, I reckon there's a few people.
Sorry.
I reckon there's a few people with one foot in today and one foot in the past.
Yep.
hoping it's going to come back.
It's not going to come back.
They may be unlucky, unfortunately. So anyway, awesome. Thanks so much for hosting that panel. That was great, and a great and practical conversation as well, rather than being too ethereal. It was really practical. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And then now for everyone else, we have a short 5-minute break or so until 3:20. So this is your last chance to network with someone. It's your last chance to go to Expo and win something, if you can win something. And then back at 3:20 for the excellent Liam Hayes from Oricon, who's going to talk us through the future of HR reimagined. So I'm looking forward to that. So we will see you in 5 minutes for that final session.